So when I grew up, I was raised with this idea that when you meet someone for the first time, you look them in the eye and you shake their hand, not because you owe them anything, not because you know them or not, but because you have respect, because you have common courtesy, because you have decency. And I remember a number of years ago, I was at a job interview for a local retailer, and I'd met this department manager and reached out my hand to shake their hand, and they outright refused to shake my hand. They were standing there with their hand behind their back and looking up, trying to act like they didn't see me trying to do that, being dismissive, being rude. And ultimately, I didn't end up taking the job for reasons you guys could probably imagine. But ultimately, what was so interesting was, little did I know, the real job interview that I would be having was the date that I'd had scheduled later that evening. And women will ask all these kinds of questions when meeting you the first time, right? Questions about family, questions about work, about your job, about future goals, goals in life, perhaps even about past relationships. But what about what men want? What about when men want standards, when men want respect, when men want loyalty? You look at a lot of the bad behavior that I've seen women even openly celebrating a lot of the time. They will ask men all these questions like they are the prize, but not want to be held accountable, not want to bring something to the table that warrants having that high quality man that they so desire. Now, I know this might not be the best example, but a while back I had come across this kind of table interview podcast with quite a few women and a few men. I think the men were the ones that were running the podcast. But there was a woman on there who was openly bragging about something that she had done behind her ex-boyfriend's back while they were together. And sitting there with a smile on her face, laughing about it, bragging about it, arrogantly celebrating her doing this, quite frankly, irredeemable behavior. And you have a lot of women now who are looking at stuff like that and thinking that is the thing to do and that they can get away with it because there's no shame for it, by the way. And that's exactly the problem. There is hardly any respect in relationships, in society, if you want to put it that way. And not only that, but the disrespect is being rewarded. It is being rewarded, like a woman like that having a platform, getting the attention and validation, saying something like that. And even recently, when it comes to loyalty, I had unintentionally ran this experiment. And I heard this kind of idea where women will flirt with men that have wedding rings. And I have a ring sometimes I'll wear on my pointer finger, but I decided to throw it on my ring finger. And I remember I'd walked into a bookstore. Right then and there, the cashier was flirting with me, all over me, knowing that I had on this wedding ring, that she would probably have assumed that I was married. And when we say that women shouldn't be doing things like that, they shouldn't be talking to men who are married like that. They shouldn't be doing things in relationships like going to nightclubs, going to bars, going to settings that really involve people just wanting to hook up. You're told that you are insecure. Meanwhile, the ironic thing is the insecure ones are the ones who engage in these kind of activities because you need attention and validation that roots from a place of insecurity. And you have a lot of women nowadays who are insecure. And even doing something like that shows you they need attention from other men. Mind you, not attention from a man, because one man is not enough for them. They've shown that already. They need attention from multiple different men. And they're trying to compete with other women now for their boyfriends or for whatever things that there is. Like even I had a family member of mine who, when I was younger, she got a lot of money in a divorce, right? Shocker. But in all seriousness, this girl had a lot of money from a divorce. And she would wear these very expensive diamond rings, from what I heard, worth upwards of $100,000. And she would go in public, and if she walked past a girl in the street or in a mall somewhere like that, she would deliberately try to itch her nose to try to show off, to try to flaunt that she had this expensive diamond ring. Again, not carrying herself at all in a respectable way. And the way I see women act nowadays, not just in settings like that, but especially in relationships, shows that they have no respect at all. None whatsoever. And not only do they not have respect for themselves, they don't have respect for their fathers, to act like that. They certainly don't have respect for the husbands or boyfriends if they are with them. If they have kids, they don't have respect for them, because these are not things at all that someone would do if they had any care or sense of the world. And something I want to say too is you have good, decent men being beaten down by women like this, by things like divorce, things like custody battle. And earlier today, I'd heard one of the craziest stories from a friend of mine, where a number of years ago, this is before we started hanging out, but a woman that he has never even met accused him of trying to stalk her, that he was obsessed with her, that he was trying to chase her, had him arrested. Keep in mind, a girl he's never met once in his life. Now, I have my own theories on it. I think the ex-wife maybe set him up or something, because he had a divorce falling out a number of years before that. But this woman was in the area, lived in the area he lived in, and found him on Facebook, reported him to the police saying that she was being stalked by him at her work, had all of his information where he worked and stuff from the Facebook. And he was arrested, and she went there and made a statement saying it's him, and literally was pulling up the guy's Facebook to the police, a Facebook that she was not friends with him on. You think the police would look at that and be like, wait, how do you know this person? He was telling the police the whole time he's never met this woman in his life. He does not know this woman. And she was saying all these things about he's obsessed with her and he's trying to chase her and this and that. Keep in mind, a woman he didn't date. He didn't have some falling out breakup with. A woman that just wanted to ruin his life. Good men are being ruined by women like this, by women who are, quite frankly, the lowest of the low in terms of behavior, in terms of lack of self-respect, in terms of insecurity. And something I want to say too when it comes to, because that situation could be a video in itself. But when it comes to respect, when it comes to decency, when it comes to how people act amongst one another, it's really the small things that go a long way. Really just the acknowledgement, right? Like if you see someone in public, even just looking them in the eye, nodding at them, acknowledging them, opening the door for someone. It took 2 seconds, but it could have made someone's entire day. And a big issue that I have is when you kind of mention stuff like this, which I don't have an issue with this term in itself, but people will say, oh, this person's an empath, right? I think the issue is that things like that should not stick out like a sore thumb. There shouldn't have to be some label of, oh, this person is an empath. Because to me, it's really just common courtesy. It's just having decency and respect for people. It shouldn't have to stick out like a sore thumb. And you have now group settings where people are faker than ever, more disrespectful than ever. People will ask about your job, about your goals, just so they can compare and compete with you or try to compete with you, while making passive-aggressive statements, while working a job where they try to throw their coworkers under the bus in some cases, like I've seen, just so they can try to appease a manager that, by the way, doesn't care about them or their well-being. It's all fake. And you have people who don't respect your time. Women like this do not respect your time, like I mentioned earlier, who are going to lead you on, who are going to match with you on the dating app just for their own attention and, or rather, selfish purposes like attention and validation, who are going to entertain you on social media or text just to have the attention and validation. They don't respect your time in really the broader sense is they don't respect you as a person. They don't respect your time. They don't respect you. And I had someone recently who I had to distance myself from somewhat long ago, but a person who would always call me with their problems, right? And me as a friend, I'm someone who I will hear people out. Of course, I think that's what a good friend should do. But there comes a point where if you are not actively trying to solve that problem, and in some cases actively endorsing to contribute to that problem, yet you're going to want to have to drain my energy talking about it over and over and over again, knowing well that you're not going to change it, you're wasting my time. I had to distance myself from this person. It was involving them and an ex-girlfriend and stuff like that. And I just didn't have the time for it. Right? We have, us as men, we have our own, us as people, we have our own responsibilities, family things, job things, things we have to focus on. A lot of people struggling financially, especially in the city I'm in. I can't speak for the rest of the country, of course, but I've heard similar kind of sentiment from people in other cities and stuff. But even just, there are times where we get tired of the disrespect. We really do. Like, I remember I was at a grocery store, and this was early in the morning, right? And I understand, like I mentioned, with the financial stuff, people not being happy with the wages they're paid in certain lines of work, people having, of course, bad days, working early mornings, right? Maybe sleep deprived. But I remember I was at a PCC, which, if you guys don't have a PCC, the only way I can really put it is it's the Neiman Marcus of grocery stores. Everything's very marked up. It's really a premier, kind of a Whole Foods, right? Not somewhere I normally shop at. But I had asked someone it was in the meat department. I was looking for this cream cheese, and I'd asked him where it was, and he very rudely just kind of shooed me away saying, I don't know where that is. Go. And I'll put it this way. Now, I'm not someone who likes to even react to this kind of stuff. I think it's better to be, another YouTuber said this really well, but it's better to respond than to react, right? Because you don't want to let your emotions take control of you. But the best way I can put it was, I was having an early morning as well. I'll put it that way. And I responded in a way that I probably shouldn't have responded. But there comes a point where you get tired of the disrespect. You get tired of it in dating. You get tired of it in friendship, so-called, in relationships. And there's a big lack of decency nowadays. There really is. Like, I see the way a lot of women will behave in relationships of uploading certain photos they have no business, in places, by the way, they have no business being, while in a relationship. And I've seen in some cases where their boyfriend does not use social media, so they have no idea what they're even posting. They get enjoyment out of this secrecy, out of doing things behind their back. And it's all just a big part of this big, really downgrade in sense of decency, in sense of care, right? And then when it's called out, then the manipulation begins. Then it's, oh, you're controlling, oh, you're manipulating, all these kind of things. Where when it comes to respect, what women need to understand is that there are things that you do not do, there are places you do not go to while you're in a relationship, whether it's short-term or long-term. You don't do these things when you're in a relationship. Even if you're single, it's bad enough. If you ask me personally, nightclubs, raves, bars, even women who are single going to those kind of places, to me, is still not a woman I would look to want to date. They're just not. Because they, quite frankly, know what it's about. I understand some are worse than others, right? Like, I think that a nightclub and a rave is much more, really a much bigger red flag than a bar. But I see stuff like this, and I see it from women who are in relationships. And I think to myself, why so many men overlook stuff like that just so they are not single? Just so they have a girlfriend. Because they think that is so important for some reason to have this kind of image. And what I find so crazy too is women will see a man who's respectful, who opens doors, who doesn't cuss, who's good with animals, however you want to put it, nowadays, and they'll think it's boring. They will think it is boring. And by the way, I'm not talking about nice guy, by the way. I'm not talking about the nice guy who gets walked over, or the passive guy, rather. I'm talking about just someone who has common courtesy, someone who's respectful. A lot of women do not reciprocate well that. They see that as boring. And that's a big problem. Because you have a lot of men who look at that. Some are going to play the part. They're going to be the player and lie and throw their self-respect out of the window. But you have a lot of other men who are not going to want to play part in this. And as really anyone would, if you're investing in something that is disproportionately backfiring on you or harming you, something that is not at all to your overall well-being, right? Let's say if it's a toxic friend or something like that. You're naturally going to distance yourself from that person. You're actually going to distance yourself from that thing. Just as in this example, you're naturally not going to want to play part in these kind of games. I'm not going to change who I am as a person just to appease a woman that I don't even know. I'm not going to do it. I would rather be single, because there are things that you need to understand. When you allow a woman like that into your life, it's not going to go well. Just like I explained earlier. I've talked about people overlooking red flags in previous videos. Divorce, breakup, men having their lives ruined. These are the kind of women who are very well capable of doing those kind of things, and why, unfortunately, modern dating rewards disrespect. And I used to think this was just a generic statement to think of women wanting men that are disrespectful and men who are arrogant. But in terms of a broader sense, a general sense here, you look at what is reward in terms of the men that they are going after, the men that they aren't cheating on. It's very sadly the men who are disrespectful, because they think decency, they think standards and principle are boring. It's not good enough. But as always, guys, that's just my kind of thoughts, my 2 cents on this. As always, I appreciate you for viewing the video. Hope you guys have a good one. Thank you.